Welcome to Shorr Solutions, the podcast. I'm one of the hosts, Mara Shorr. I'm a partner in the medical practice management company, yes, Shorr Solutions. Who's the other host, you may ask? Easy answer. That would be my father, our founding partner, Jay Shorr. Together, we now have an amazing team and clients across the country. Listen as we chat, converse, strategize, and commiserate over life in the aesthetic medical industry. It's time for you to listen, learn, and be inspired as we help you kickstart your practice, because who doesn't want a little more help? Welcome to Shorr Solutions, the podcast. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Shorr Solutions, the podcast. I am your hostess with what we hope is the mostest as far as information, that is Mara Shorr, and I am one of the partners here at Shorr Solutions, your all-time favorite practice management consulting firm here in the aesthetic space. And I'm going to be doing a solo episode today, but we want to really get started, and I want to talk about the top 5 protocols / policies that you are missing in your practice. So we are going to just give a little bit of information on each one. And of course, if you have any questions at all, please don't ever hesitate to contact me, and I am happy to explain further. But we're going to go ahead and get started. So one is a policy you have heard me talk about time and time again, and that is a social media policy. What do I mean by a social media policy? In your practice, you should have a policy that each of your team members has to sign, and that policy should state who is able to post on behalf of your practice for social media. So who is able in your practice? Is that your marketing manager? Is that an office manager, practice administrator? So this all really needs to be decided up front. 2, are there things that are off limits in what it is that they're about to, or what they're able to post about? So things like politics, religion. Personally, here at Shorr Solutions, we recommend keeping those things off of social media when it comes to the representation of your business, but that's just us being a little overly cautious. So we want to think about some of these things and really have that all set into place, but have a full policy. This should be put into place, and your team members should sign this when they sign with your company. So when they go ahead and get started. So that is number 1. And of course, I am nothing without my trusty checklist here. So number 2, we're aesthetic practices, right? So we are in the aesthetic business, and I'm going to go ahead and say that the majority of your team members, the people that work for you, want to enjoy the benefits of being able to receive procedures from your practice, whether those are laser RF devices, whether those are injectables. Let's think about what that may look like. A peel. Sometimes if you're a surgical practice, that includes surgery. So that could be cosmetic, plastics, body, facial, etc. So we know we're all about that. We're all about your team members. We're all about them enjoying those benefits. However, I want to make sure that you think something through. We want to have a policy. So number 1, in that policy, who do they need to receive approval from? So we don't love it when team members just have, unlimited free-for-all access to procedures at any given time. So we want to make sure we say who's going to be approving that. Is that an office manager, practice manager, the practice owner? So who approves the number of procedures? How often are they allowed to have certain procedures, i.e., 1 neurotoxin per quarter, for example, things like that. Is that because inventory is supplied by the vendor rep, which I highly recommend, by the way? Or is that at cost? Because if you are a new practice, maybe your vendor rep isn't as free flowing with some of those samples, if you will. I put those in air quotes for those of you that can't see me, but whether they're samples or they're for staff, we want to make sure that that doesn't come out of pocket. For a surgical procedure, often that will be discounted. So to your staff, that will be discounted. So we want to think about, number 1, what that pricing looks like, what that pricing model looks like. And number 2, how often are they able to get certain procedures that are either at cost or complementary to them. Number 3, we wanted to, of course, I talked about that one first. Who is it that they should be going to for approval? Now, Every one of your team members needs to have a patient chart, of course. So everything should be logged. And then, of course, we want to make sure that this is all documented. It's not just that they have a chart, but it's an active chart and all of that information is in there. So make sure that we know and that they know what the procedure is for procedures. So number 3, this one is going to be one you really want to make sure you have locked down, especially with the holidays coming up. And we'll talk about this in upcoming podcasts. But what is your paid time off request policy? So I've talked about this before. Team members are really requesting more PTO than they used to as far as what it is that they find acceptable. So how much PTO is PTO separated by and PTO again is paid time off. So is that vacation, sick, something else? So in some states like California, it does have to be separated a little bit differently and in very specific ways. Other states don't have any mandates when it comes to paid time off. So not only do you want to know what that breakdown is, but who do they request that paid time off from in your office? Again, office manager, practice manager, owner, who do they request that paid time off from? We also want to talk about the approval, that they do need approval. They can't just take that off. So what does the approval policy looks like? How should they be requesting? So in other words, are we talking about they must send an email, they must send a text message? I really encourage a form of written communication for both request and approval. I also really want them to make sure that they're also responsible for letting their team members know when they'll be out as well, once that is approved. So also, how far in advance are you requesting that they request approval? So with the holidays coming up, I truly encourage that by the end of October, they should have all of their November, December PTO requests, because it's going to be a little bit of what I like to call scheduling Tetris to make sure that everyone has enough coverage. So make sure that they have their holiday requests in by the time that you have requested that they get their requests in, so to speak. So that is the third. So far we've talked about the social media policy, the procedure for procedures, and then the PTO request policy. Now, number 4, we want to talk about receiving inventory. So this should be whether we're talking about inventory, surgical supplies, breast implants count as inventory when they come in. So whether we're talking about injectables, the injectable itself, the needles, syringes, all of these things are inventory on top of skincare inventory and retail product. So the reason that you need to have a policy, who is allowed to order? Again, office manager. Sometimes we have someone on the clinical side, practice manager, or only the owner who's allowed to order. Now, where do they need to seek approval? Over a certain amount per month, per order? What does that look like? Also, are there par levels? So when they're conducting their inventory check, so whether you have maybe a medical assistant that's assisting with that, whether that is a PCC, a patient care coordinator, what is the protocol as far as you have the person that is conducting inventory? How do they let the person that is doing the ordering know what needs to be ordered by when and how much? We want to make sure we have protocols for all of those things. Once the actual inventory is received, we then want to think about a protocol in place for that. So who receives the box? Who signs for this box of gloriousness when it comes in, right? So who receives it? Where does it go? Who then is responsible for opening the box? Who's responsible for making sure that they check that what's in the packing slip matches what was ordered and that what is in the box matches the packing slip? Who's in charge of putting the product away and in what fashion? And how do we log that it has been put away? So all of these things need a process and need strong communication with the team internally. This is a really, really strong opportunity for theft. And quite honestly, for you to also be overcharged or overbilled for product that maybe you purchased but didn't receive. So that's where we want to make sure that there is a process and a protocol in place. Yes, we are going to take a slight break, a slight intermission, because what kind of business would we be if we didn't tell you about our own services? I want to take a minute and talk to you about the Conversion Cascade course and all that it has to offer. We want you to be trained to acquire loyal patients and boost your revenue in your aesthetic practice. Now, with our Conversion Cascade online course, you and your team will be able to master 2 key things important to growing your aesthetic practice and becoming successful, acquiring patients and retaining new patients. So, Let's talk about a couple of things. As a step-by-step sales funnel training, the course is designed specifically to help you and your team attract more patients, convert more calls to consults, convert consults to treatments and procedures, and to keep your patients coming back for more. Not only will our Conversion Cascade course help to strengthen and develop your team's phone and sales skills in order to acquire, convert, and retain loyal patients, it will serve as a valuable onboarding training tool for every new team member that joins your practice. Yes, every new team member that joins your practice. Plus, in the course, you will receive downloadable marketing checklists, phone scripts, conversion tracking tools, and more. So, sign up for the course to get started on increasing your revenue and acquiring and retaining new and existing patients. Yes, how to acquire and how to keep them coming back for more. It only takes approximately 4 hours to complete. You can finish it at your own pace and you'll have lifetime access. Yes, that is for the lifetime of the course. And a special thank you for being our podcast listener. We'll give you 20% off. Yes, 20% off. Just enter the discount code podcast. Yes, podcast to start saving now. So click on the link in our show notes to sign up for the Conversion Cascade online course and start acquiring more patients now. The final one that we're going to talk about that I see really missed all the time is onboarding. What is your onboarding checklist? What is an onboarding checklist, you might ask? Well, that is when you bring in a new team member, you have vetted them, you have done everything possible. They have this glorious, beautiful resume. You have done a wonderful interview. Your team loves them. The background check cleared, reference checks cleared. Everybody has agreed to the perfect compensation plan. Maybe there's negotiations, maybe there's not, but everyone's agreed to all of these things. And then they start on their first day and they weren't prepared. You weren't prepared for them internally. So we need to have that onboarding checklist so that we know all of these things, who's going to do them each step of the way. Now, this includes 1 week prior to them starting, as well as the 2 to 3 weeks after they start. So who is going to make sure that all of their employment paperwork is saved in a secure file? Who's going to make sure that we have their information ready for payroll so that we can get this amazing person paid? Who's going to make sure of all of these things, right? Who's going to make sure that they know what they're supposed to wear when they first show up and give them the dress code, the employee handbook? What are they supposed to do the first day that they come? What time are they supposed to show up? When they show up, what are they supposed to be doing on day 1, day 2, week 1, and week 2? There needs to be a really strong and thorough onboarding checklist. It's going to look a little bit different for each procedure, but there's going to be a lot of similarities throughout. However, I can assure you that quite honestly, if you don't have a checklist, it will really fall through the cracks and you're going to be scrambling because guess what? You're a busy practice. And because you're a busy practice, you're going to be slammed the day that they walk through that door. So we really want to make sure you have that checklist, that policy, procedure, protocol in place. So we're going to wrap up this episode of Shorr Solutions, the podcast, and we're going to go over one more time. You want your social media policy for your team, your procedure for procedures, your PTO request form, your inventory management process, and you want an onboarding checklist. So with that, if you have any questions at all, please don't hesitate to reach out, contact. I love having conversations about making sure that your team is successful. So thank you so much for joining me for another episode of Shorr Solutions, the podcast. Have a great day.